This Jeep Wagoneer is $118,000 and it's been on this lot for over 280 days. And this Jeep Wrangler Rubicon is almost $68,000. And no matter what Jeep dealership I go to, the story just seems to be always the same. Prices are just way too high, and vehicles like these are just sitting on the lots and not selling. Jeep used to be really cheap, but now they're trying to compete with luxury brands like Mercedes, BMW, Porsche, Lexus, and Audi. But if you go walk around some of those higher end luxury brands and look at those prices, they're not as high as you would think, and it actually makes the prices of these luxury Jeeps even more shocking. So in this video, we're going to look at some of these overpriced luxury Jeeps, and then we're going to go to Mercedes, Porsche, and Lexus and see if buying a luxury Jeep is actually worth it, or if you should go with one of those real, genuine luxury brands. And we're starting here at the most expensive Jeep that you can buy right now, and that would be the Wagoneer, which is the lower end of their full-size, well, suburban size luxury SUV, and then also the even more expensive Grand Wagoneer right here. And this is pretty much the highest trim level of a Grand Wagoneer that I've ever seen anywhere, and it is insanely expensive. You get a roof rack on the top, get this nice black with chrome trim. I actually think the taillights on these are pretty cool. And this is the Series 3, which is one of the highest trim levels that you can get. Just exactly how much is this Series 3? Well, prepare for your mind to be absolutely blown, because this price is completely nuts. The 2024 model Grand Wagoneer L Series 3 4x4, and it actually does not have the V8. It's got their new Hurricane twin turbo. It is a whopping $118,385. And I understand it's supposed to be luxury, which, looking in here, the inside is pretty nice. You got leather, wood, I don't know if that's real or fake. A nice steering wheel with all the buttons on it, leather on the inside, and more of that wood trim. And of course, a huge skylight on the top of this thing. But I honestly don't think that makes it worth $118,000 whatsoever. That thing should more be like 65. That's what I think anyways, as far as Jeep goes. Maybe 75 if you're pushing luxury. But they do have a lower trim level Wagoneer, like this one here and this one here, and I think this is the cheapest one you can get, and I really judge it by the wheels. As you can see, the wheels here and then the wheels here get a little bit larger, and then the wheels on that one get even up to 22. Usually with these luxury cars, the bigger the wheels from the factory, the more expensive they get. So this right here, in comparison, is a Series 2, which is a step below. Still has a Hurricane twin turbo and the 8-speed transmission. Still has leather seats, but it does not have the leather dash, and it does have the wood trim on there. Does not have the sky roof though, but this one is less. It's priced at $76,410, which is lower and getting more reasonable, but they take out a lot to get to that price point. And then you have an even lower trim level here that must not be that much lower, because honestly it looks the same inside. It just has a lot smaller wheels, again with the Hurricane twin turbo, and it's $77,750. It's a Wagoneer L, which really the difference is only $1,000 between these two, and everything looks the same except the wheels. There's not that much of a difference. But obviously the Wagoneer and the Grand Wagoneer isn't the only SUV that they have. They also have the Grand Cherokee, which is a pretty popular SUV, and honestly I've driven these on road trips. I rented them from like budget and stuff, and they're actually quite comfortable. But one thing that's weird is it has the most sensitive brakes out of any car that I have ever driven. If you ever drive one, tap the brakes a little bit, you'll understand. Now when it comes to these Grand Cherokees, what kind of prices are they? Let's look at this like very dark gray one with some pretty nice wheels, and it's a 2025 model. You can kind of tell which vehicles are at least somewhat selling when they actually have 2025s on the lot. Just a quick side note, if it's still a 23, 24, obviously it's a little bit harder to sell that type of vehicle because it's just sitting there. But this is a 2025, which shows you that the Grand Cherokees are selling because they're cheaper than a Grand Wagoneer a little bit. So this is a 2025 Grand Cherokee L Altitude X 4x4. That's a mouthful. Still with a 3-liter V6 and not the twin turbo Hurricane engine, same 8-speed automatic. And it's $51,920. So we're getting down there a little bit when it comes to more reasonable prices. Now the average car in this last couple of years is around $45,000 is the average selling price for most cars nowadays. And that's way up from what it was just a few years ago. But the real question is, do they get a little bit cheaper? Probably this one. Let's take a look. Well, I found one that's more expensive. I thought it was cheaper, but this is the 4xe hybrid electric version, and it's a little pricey. $65,605, which I would never pay that much for any Grand Cherokee at all, especially the hybrid one, because I personally don't like them. And there's another 4xe. So I don't see any Grand Cherokees under $51,000 on this lot. But what blows my mind even more is how expensive the Wrangler Rubicon has gotten. We've got a pretty good lineup of them right here. This is just more of like a base Sport Wrangler, and even the Sport S is high. This is a 2024 at $57,745, which means the price of the Rubicon will probably blow your mind. We've got this blue Rubicon here at $62,970, and this gray one is even more expensive, also still a 2024. No 25s on the Rubicon or any Wranglers yet on the lot, which means they're still trying to get rid of this inventory, but this one is $67,655. And so the price of Jeep has gone totally insane because they're, again, have been trying to be a luxury brand when they never really were meant to be luxury brands to begin with. All of the Jeeps here, over there, were just meant to be like really good, comfortable daily drivers, with the exception of the Wrangler Rubicon that's supposed to crawl rocks and mostly crawl moles. So that leads us to the next part of this video and the next question. If you're going to be spending anywhere from $50,000 all the way up to $118,000 for a luxury SUV, what else can you get? We're going to go to Mercedes, Porsche, I think Lexus, and maybe a couple more brands. They're all pretty close around here. Mercedes is right there. So let's walk over to Mercedes and check that out first to see what you can get compared to these Jeep SUVs. So as I was walking over to Mercedes, which is right there, I came across something really cool and really rare. The Chevy 454 Silverado right here. The paint's a little rough as expected, or as Bring a Trailer people would call it, patina, but this is really, really clean. It does look like they're working on it. They've got some spots here they've kind of fixed up, but I really like these old Chevy square bodies. They're just really, really cool trucks and almost impossible to find in good condition at a good price. Anyways, over to Mercedes. All right, we're at Mercedes, and if you don't ever look at the prices of like more luxury brands, I think some of the prices might shock you a little bit, especially in comparison to what those Jeeps are trying to get for the money. And there's probably one vehicle that you didn't even think of that actually is quite a bargain right now as far as what you get for the money. But first of all, these two Mercedes right here, if you're willing to spend $118,000 on that Grand Wagoneer, you should just spend an extra 10 grand and get one of these instead. This is a 2025 GLS 580, and it is just a really beautiful looking SUV. And not only is it good looking, it's really fast. It has a 4-liter V8 engine, bi-turbo with 510 horsepower and 538 feet-pounds of torque, which is way more power than you're ever gonna need. But when you need it, it's really nice to have it. And of course, it is all-wheel drive. Now, the starting MSRP is actually less than that Grand Wagoneer L. The suggested retail is $114,800, and this does have a little bit of optional equipment, including the Alpine gray color, which is a really fantastic flat gray. With all these options, it brings it up to $129,310, which is about 10 or 11,000 more than getting a Jeep. So you spend 10 grand, 11 grand more, and you actually get a freaky fast, all-wheel drive, real luxury vehicle. But as I go across this road, they actually do get cheaper and more in the price range of the Grand Cherokee. This is a 2024 GLB 250. It has a 2-liter inline-4 turbo with 221 horsepower and 258 feet-pounds of torque, which in a SUV this size, a little bit smaller than that full-size one you saw, will pretty much make it scoot. And it's right in line with the prices of those Jeep Grand Cherokee. You're looking at $57,150. which is right in line with the prices of the mid-50s on those Grand Cherokee. And you get something even more luxurious. Granted, that one is a bit smaller and you can't carry as much stuff. But they do have a larger SUV that's not quite $120,000 like the one I showed you over here. This is the GLE 53, and it's actually less than that Grand Wagoneer L. Still expensive, mind you, but less than the Grand Wagoneer L and more of a full-size SUV. It has an inline-6 turbo engine with a whopping 429 horsepower, and it's $102,775. I know that's still expensive, but I'm just showing you what you could get compared to spending $118,000 again on that Grand Wagoneer L. But there is one really cool vehicle that hangs out with the Mercedes dealers, and you probably wouldn't expect it or even have it on your list of vehicles to look at, but it's a full-size SUV, solid axles, 4-wheel drive, and it's a really, really fun, I think, daily driver slash fun haver that a lot of people don't even know exists. And that is this, the Ineos Grenadier. And I feel like this is one of the best full-size SUV bargains right now for two reasons. You can get it in this pretty green color, this nice blue color, obviously black, and the price is less than a Grand Wagoneer L. This one here is $83,070, but they do have one that's a little bit cheaper, and it's got Steelies, which Steelies are really cool. You never have to worry about dinging them, and the wheels are super cheap. This one is an MSRP of $78,725, but they have a lease special for $72,225 at $889 a month for 36 months. But what's even cooler is the interest rate is pretty low for this market. They're able to give you 2.9% interest rate at 60 months, and 2.9% is one of the lowest rates that you're going to find right now when it comes to new vehicles, which makes that a good bargain. If you're looking at something a little bit cheaper but has double the interest rate, then that makes more sense. Do you want to see the most ridiculous thing at Mercedes that you could get for less than the price of that Grand Wagoneer? This one will blow your mind. Watch this. You can get this Mercedes built out Sprinter van, 3,500. It is a used 2016, but it has 22,000 miles on it. But that's irrelevant because you can get this massive thing to fit your entire family and all your toys and all your stuff for $119,900. You get this big old thing for $2,000 more, or actually like $1,500 more than getting that Jeep Grand Wagoneer L. And you can go on so many adventures in this thing, it's ridiculous. But enough about Mercedes and Ineos. Let's move on and see what Porsche has to offer between the $50,000 and $118,000 range of SUVs. And the cheapest one that they're gonna have on the lot is gonna be the Porsche Macan. And again, these prices are all relative to the luxury SUVs that Jeep was selling. This 2024 Macan in black is $69,995. This white one here is a 2023 and it's $64,995. And it's slightly used with only 3,900 miles. But we're not looking at used ones, we're trying to find the new one. And that's gonna be this Porsche Macan T right here with a 2-liter turbocharged inline 4-cylinder at $80,650. Now when you compare like the Macan, which is more of like a mid-size to medium-size whatever SUV, then the Grand Cherokee actually makes more sense because you can get that in the mid-50s, especially if you need more room, because the Macan has like a pretty intense sloped back right here, and so it doesn't have as much room in the back for all your crap. But as you go across this road, they do get more expensive pretty quickly. If you wanted something like this Cayenne here or this Cayenne here, which is a 2024 with a 3-liter turbocharged V6, 348 horsepower, you're actually looking at $100,440. And at that price, I think grabbing something like the Ineos Grenadier or one of those Mercedes is probably your better luxury bargain. All right, I finally made it here to Audi, and there's two vehicles in specifically that I want to look at. The first one is the Q8, which is pretty much the most expensive full-size SUV that Audi has, and it's also the nicest. But this is a 2025 Q8 with really, really nice tan leather on black, which is just perfect. And the suggested retail starts at $74,400, but it does have a lot of packages that make everything a lot nicer with better wheels and all that Audi hotness. But this will run you $86,855, well under the $118,000 that Grand Wagoneer was. The booty is not as big as the Grand Wagoneer, but to be honest, how many times are you actually gonna fill up the entire back of a Grand Wagoneer? Probably never, to be honest, unless it's Christmas time like it's approaching now and you got a bunch of stuff you need to throw in there. And the other one I wanted to look at was this, the SQ5. And it is a little bit smaller than that Q8, but the price starts to go down. And again, much more luxurious than the Grand Wagoneer. So you got a 2024 SQ5 Sportback, that'll run you $73,270. And they do have quite a few to choose from. Actually, for some reason, like this tan color. And it does have a little bit of sparkly flake in it. Most companies who do this tan color usually do it flat, but looks like they shined it up a bit. But all of these seem to run around the same price. That's $75,890, that's $84,000, which at this price, you should just go get the Q8 down there. That one's $75,000, that one's $70,000. And in my last video, I looked at a bunch of trucks and you'll notice that they all had discounts. None of these Audis have any discounts at all. If you look in the window, MSRP and $0 discount. So I'm curious if they're actually selling their vehicles compared to some of the other brands out there. Now there is one other interesting option here as you run down in size, and that's the Q3. It's smaller than like the Grand Cherokee, but it's bigger than like a Jeep Renegade. So more of like a mid-size SUV. So if you're shopping around, you could grab one of these and keep it luxury instead of buying the Jeep. And like this 2024 Q3 S line which is a bit more sporty, will run you $46,575. However, since we're on the German car lot, they also have Volkswagen, and I wasn't really planning on showing any of these Volkswagens because they're not considered luxury. But what I find interesting is you can actually get this Volkswagen Atlas, which is comparable to the size of a Grand Cherokee, for less than what we saw those Grand Cherokees for. This 2024 model is $49,000 MSRP, which, as you saw, the Grand Cherokees were 51 and up, but this does have a $1,699 discount, bringing it to $47,500 for a nice full-size SUV that's comparable to the Grand Cherokee. And interesting enough, they actually have 2025 models that are starting to come on the lot, and Jeep still had all their Wagoneers as 2024 models. Now, with all that aside, we do have two more brands I want to check out real quick, and they're right next to each other. That's going to be BMW and the big dog, one of the fastest selling vehicles right now, Lexus. All right, I'm here at BMW, and this one's really just going to be a quick, maybe 1 minute segment in this part because there's only two to look at, and both of them are around the price range. One is slightly less than the Grand Cherokee L, and one is higher. We'll start with the higher one, and this is probably the biggest BMW SUV that you can get, and it's the X7 M60i. And this is the one that is more than the Grand Wagoneer, and BMW doesn't have anything as big as a Grand Wagoneer. This is more like Grand Cherokee size, but this little blue beauty is very expensive, and honestly didn't think it would be this much. It is $121,905, $400 for paint protection film, bringing it to $122,304. And it is pretty nice on the interior, but I don't think you should get that over the Wagoneer L. Honestly, just grab a Grand Cherokee, or even the Mercedes that we looked at before would be a better option than that. But they do get smaller. This is an X5, and this is to the point where it's smaller than a Grand Wagoneer. But this thing is $100,025, and it is pretty nice on the inside. I do hate these screens that are just slapped on the top of the dash going all the way across. I think that's kind of stupid. But our final one to go check out, and the reigning champion of value for the money luxury, and that's going to be Lexus. And honestly, I'm most excited about showing you Lexus because they're probably the best bang for the buck luxury that you can get right now in this market. For example, this TX350 is probably on the larger side. It's a little bit bigger than a Grand Cherokee and closer to the size of a Grand Cherokee L, maybe like a few inches shorter. So instead of spending 118 grand on a Grand Cherokee L, you could grab a Lexus, which is way nicer, and honestly, Lexus is way more reliable than Jeep. Trust me, I've owned a lot of Jeeps. They're not very reliable, but Lexus, Toyota, super reliable. Even with some of the newer engines, they'll fix anything that's wrong with them. But the inside is super nice, really comfortable leather seats. This has the moonroof on the top that goes across the whole thing, just like the Grand Wagoneer L, but it is almost half as much. 2024 9353C TX350 Premium All-Wheel Drive, that's a mouthful, is $64,445. Now, one thing I'd really like to show you, but they actually don't have a new one here, is like the LX, which this is the LX right here, and also I'd like to find a GX. But most of the time, those are ordered and for customer before they even get to Lexus. But I really wish there was one here to show you. But if they don't have it, I can't show you. As you can see, there are a lot of luxury vehicles that you can buy and that you have the options to buy instead of buying that $118,000 Jeep, which honestly just doesn't make sense when you have so many vehicles that are so much nicer for the same or even less money. And anyways, that's gonna do it for today's video. If you made it here to the end, I really appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything, and hit like on this video because it just helps reach more people. See you in the next one.